Welcome back to Galaxy Grid. I'm Lucas Chayan, joined today by Zach Picorni and Will Owens. Our normal guest, Thad Pininkavich, our colleague, is in Europe and the internet connection was not so good. So it's just going to be $3 today. Before we begin, please refer to the link to this disclaimer in the show notes and note that none of the information in this show constitutes investment advice or an offer, recommendation, or solicitation by Galaxy or any of its affiliates to buy or sell any securities. All right. We are back, baby. What a week. I mean, we started last week's episode basically saying that like crypto had just been stuck for a long time and we thought that there was a big move coming. We didn't know which direction it was going to be. Boom. A few days later, just absolute God green candles all across the board. Things have absolutely ripped since we last recorded last Monday. And we're going to talk about that a little bit first. If you have not been paying attention, BTC is up almost 24% on the week. ETH was up 31%, Sol up 28%. We saw billions of dollars in liquidations, more liquidations than on 1010, I believe, in aggregate now. ETF inflows have completely ramped up. We saw 1.92 billion in BTC ETF flows, the largest since October 2025. ETH had almost 700 million in ETF flows last week. And altcoins they're acting like altcoins again, right? Like altcoins are back on the menu, boys. ENA plus 100%, Pump 75%, Zcash 67%. The Dino coins are back. XRP plus 50%. Fear and greed index has flipped from extreme fear to extreme greed. I mean, the list goes on and on. Like, I mean, as Will would say, like, holy, like right now. So that was, as you can tell, I am pumped. It feels good, but obviously let's not get too excited. Zach, how you feeling here? Like, for you guys our listeners don't sit on the desk with us every day, but like, if you did, you would know, like, Zach basically comes into the office like a few times a week and he like sits in his desk and he like turns around to everyone. He's like, feels like the bottom's in. And it's been funny for a while, but it does feel like that. So how are you feeling here, Zach?
No, I mean, I think it feels good. Like like the substance of what's been kind of going on under the surface that's kind of out of view of like the average person has just been building up for what has felt like 3 or 4 months between like regulatory stuff. Like, I mean, even though clarity is not looking so hot, like just the narrative of that building up and then essentially the SEC stepping in and saying like, oh, if clarity doesn't pass, like we'll figure out a way ourselves. On top of like all the RWA tokenization stuff, like we're almost a full 2 years into that experiment. So I think a lot of the stuff that people have been doing is starting to manifest. And then just like technically looking at the chart, it was just bullish divergences everywhere. Like Bitcoin did not want to go below that like 57, 60K level. And we just kind of had like the golden opportunity where all these things just converged at once last week. And like we clearly ripped. And like even looking at it through the weekend, like we held up extremely well. So things are feeling good. Max pain still feels higher. Like specifically on like the Bitcoin ETH end of the spectrum, like there's been a lot of stuff going on with social trading and people being allocated to memes and all of that stuff. But it still feels like on the opposite side of the barbell trade, which appears to be back, people are like underweight, like Bitcoin ETH, and they've actually performed quite well. But yeah, I think we just had like the golden setup where all of the substance just like price just caught up to all the substance at once. And a lot of the old narratives like Bitcoin being like the debasement hedge and all of that stuff, which is like arguably the most important part because people just left Bitcoin for dead. It's like, oh, like inflation, all of this stuff. Why isn't it trading higher? But yeah, no, it feels good. It looks good. And max pain is still higher, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, like it was like a holy trinity of 3 events last week. It felt like we had the SEC tokenization announcement on Tuesday. We had the Besson come in and say they're going to support the long end on Wednesday. which, brought back the debasement trade for Bitcoin. And yeah, I think you're spot on. A lot of people have been wondering, like, what is the catalyst for Bitcoin, right? Like, what is the narrative? It felt a little bit narrative less. And as a result, it felt like mostly negative narratives were driving it, quantum worries and things like that. I don't think anyone's talking about quantum right now, right? Like, everything has completely shifted.
Yeah.
Then
That's also what I've always said. Like, Bitcoin at 100K, nobody will care about quantum. Like, purely people were just looking for a narrative to latch onto, and like, I think price dispels the quantum like narrative. Not that it's not an issue that doesn't exist, but I think people were just prescribing too much weight to the narrative.
It's funny,
like, largely because of
I feel
price.
like it's the same thing with like every token, like Pump Fund too. It's like Pump is like down from ICO price, and meme coins are a scam, and like everything's a scam, and like Solana's a casino. And now that Pump's up, it's like, oh, actually, like, meme coins are here to stay forever. They're gonna onboard all these new users into crypto. This is like the future of everything. Like, everything will be digital. Like, I don't know. It's just kind of funny. I think just like the fact that Donald Trump said the word hyperliquid is just like insane. Like, that was what everybody was talking about last week. Like in the middle of the week, I was like, I tweeted, I was like, guy with like 4.3 hype is going through his every contact in his phone, telling everybody that Trump just said hyperliquid. And so yeah, we had hype like breaking all time highs. Like, just the weekly candles on these tokens, like insane. Like, this was I believe like Bitcoin's biggest weekly candle in 3 years. You look at like Zcash weekly candle, like insane. Like, obviously we already said Pump. I mean, all these tokens, right? And then and then Onchain too, right? Like, people were like, oh wait, actually we should probably be pumping hyper EVM tokens because hype just broke all-time high. And so all of a sudden people are trading like hyper EVM tokens. It's like, I made a joke to Zach this morning because I was actually like out of town this weekend with my family, like visiting some family, and I was like, seems like every weekend I'm like AFK. I miss some like generational occurrence on chain, and every time I'm locked in, it's like 10-10 or something. Like, the worst thing ever happens. But yeah, oh yeah, also like USDT dominance dropped 20%, right, which broke a 2-year uptrend. So it's just like, I don't know. I think in my mind, it kind of does make sense that maybe like the major move has happened, at least for short term future. And I think it kind of makes sense we like chop between like, I don't know, 75K to 85K maybe until Q4, and then kind of go up from there potentially.
That sounds like what somebody who's not allocated would say, basically. No. I love the point on Pump. Like, it's the classic price leads narrative. Like, yes, it's like Pump, one of the most profitable applications over the past 2 years, top of the list on a monthly basis, basically all the time, competing with Hyperliquid, is now in the eyes of all investors like one of the best, most fundamentally sound investments ever. Whereas a month ago it was not. But yeah, I mean, I think a big question a lot of people is, what's the spot demand going to look like? The ETF side is very encouraging, but yeah, like, to get a move of this magnitude, you obviously also need a ton of short covering, which it seems like we got a lot of that now. And, now we enter the beast and approach the 80K kind of, the 80K beast. I think that's kind of like a huge level that people are looking at. But it is hard to think of Bitcoin like dropping all the way back down to like the low 60s again. Can't count out anything. Another dynamic here is we are
like, knock on wood or something after saying that.
We're in the tail end of summer, right? And so it's very low liquidity environment, which also helps contribute to all this. But definitely a huge positive. And we started this podcast in the bear market, right? And so like, it feels good to finally have, like, this is our first episode, I think, where we can be like, oh, it's green across the board, right? I think one other thing here is definitely on the regulatory front. Zach, you hinted at it a little bit. It actually seems like people are getting more bullish on clarity again. It's once again like this price leads narrative thing. I was like a few like, I saw a lot of tweets from people being like looks like clarity is looking like more likely to happen again. I don't know if that's actually true. I think that's more just like hope now that price is up again. But we did get some really encouraging news on the SEC front last week. Alex, our head of firm research here, actually wrote a note in our newsletter that I encourage people to check out if they want a real in-depth dive. But this is basically the first set of U.S. security rules that were actually written for crypto token issuances, instead of kind of forcing them into an equity framework. So creates a lawful path for certain tokens to be sold to the American public, including retail. And just as important, like it also has a formal off-ramp. So the investment contract status ends once the project is built. So this was a really exciting announcement. It happened on Tuesday. I think it was a little bit overshadowed by the Besson announcement. And obviously, it's not in its final form yet. I think there's going to be a lot of comment periods and discussion of it. But I mean, if you want to talk about like what do you need for crypto to become more than just viewed as kind of like this hyper speculative, volatile trading instruments, it's these type of regulations. We've got Genius now on the stablecoin front. With the SEC introduction here, this could make it actually easier to issue tokens as a way of fundraising for your project. And that is like the holy grail for tokens, right? That there is some legal mechanism to do that. Zach has written a lot about this in terms of how some projects are figuring out unique ways like MetaDAO. And then ideally at some point we get clarity as well with, we get market structure, and suddenly you're looking at the US as an extremely crypto friendly regulatory regime where not only like can you just launch crypto as kind of a regulatory arbitrage, but it might be practically more beneficial to use a crypto mechanism and token as a way to launch a fundraiser project. So I know, none of us are kind of like legal regulatory experts, but before we move on, like any thoughts, Zach or Will, anything of interest to you on the SEC side?
Yeah, I mean, I think the startup exemption is an interesting point. Like one of the greatest things we have on chain is the ICO and being able to raise money on chain through these like lower costs, like lower friction mechanisms. And they explicitly put an exemption in there if you're raising less than $5 million, which a good portion of projects that do launch off of platforms like MetaDAO are kind of raising in that range. So I think it could be a huge catalyst for that segment of the market, but I still think there's some mismatch between like ICOs and holding tokens versus what like traditional institutions are like comfortable holding and like what they can legally hold.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of where things like Clarity would add a benefit, because it does kind of give them a straighter path to being able to own tokens and participate in governance potentially and do all that stuff. But nonetheless, being able to raise less than $5 million fully exempt, not having to register, and being able to market to US investors, like I think that could be big for like centralized exchanges that already have a bunch of crypto native people where they can actually like market ICOs straight off their platform. And that would be a huge unlock for ICOs and the industry at large. But yeah, I think it's like all positive stuff.
Yeah, definitely all positive. Definitely a positive step forward. All right, so I want to actually take a look at kind of the on-chain environment. Obviously majors, altcoins are doing great, but if you haven't really been paying attention, like you probably have no idea that on-chain has really evolved quite a bit over the past 2 years. And typically, if we are entering a new bull market, on-chain is where you see a lot of exciting new primitives and developments happen. And most people, I think, when you think of on-chain, just think of meme coins, and that's fair to an extent. But I think it also ignores a lot of the innovation that like is enabled by some of this meme coin experimentation. And I want to flag, I think, some early on-chain primitives that we're starting to see show up, and I think could really shape a lot of the new metas. We have been talking about some of this over the past few months. Will has talked a lot about the social trading, and I'm going to ask him to touch on that and kind of what that's unlocking here. But I think like if you're new to on-chain, you don't really know what's happening on-chain right now. It feels like there's really like 4 big ecosystems where we're seeing different primitives emerge, right? So you got Robinhood Chain as the new player. Like the big experiment that we're seeing there is pairing meme tokens with tokenized stocks in AMM. So basically like the fees and liquidity flow toward the actual equities, right? It drives all this RWA equity because people are trading their memes against an underlying equity. And then usually they're also like earning the fees from that in the equity itself. So like you're holding a meme and you're earning equity fees from it, which is it sounds like a funny dynamic. Vlad, the CEO of Robinhood, was like on a podcast this weekend talking about how he like would have never expected this as a primitive, but it's actually been great as a way to onboard users to get them on chain and kind of like get them exposed to both the RWA and the meme coin side. Next, we have Solana, obviously the on-chain darling of last cycle. There's there, I would say the big driver is the Ansem token. It's at the center of attention right now. We've talked about it previously, and that's really kind of like a social token experiment. It falls in line with kind of what you got with FOMO and Pulp, which are also pushing very hard on the social trading side. On Base, which has kind of been left for dead and like constantly criticized, Kobe has taken over. He's working on the Base app, not Base chain alone, but already it seems like he's getting a lot of new blood injected into the ecosystem. Coinbase has put a meme coin on their roadmap for listing, which is something they never would have done in the past, right? And that's the pressure from the Robinhood side of it. And then finally on Ethereum, there's this protocol called Fake World Assets, which is basically like this new style of on-chain gotcha. And that's like the first life on Ethereum on-chain outside of DeFi that I've seen quite a while. So I think all of these ecosystems are showing a lot of strength and actually a lot like starting to like see a resurgence in terms of activity driven by these different primitives. Will, maybe I'll throw it to you first. You're in the trenches constantly. What are you seeing that's most interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think first it's cool to talk about just like trading terminal volume. So like trading terminals did 2.35 billion in volume last week. And if you zoom out, they're doing like 500 million around that in June. Just like wasn't even too long ago. And FOMO is actually now leading trading terminals in daily volume, just like a little bit ahead of GMGN. And, we've already talked about this, but like you have this like Pump app versus FOMO kind of rivalry. Pump app has been, kind of trying to vamp the really good FOMO traders. But yeah, also I would say did you guys see the tweet about Trickshot from Nathan, the guy who works at Helios for Mert? He's I guess shout out Texas Blockchain. He's president of Texas Blockchain, but he basically made this tweet. He built this thing called Trickshot, and it's kind of this video showing like your meme coin trade. Like you'll see the green candles, you'll see your buys and sells. And I think this is the perfect thing that you'll start to see in like TikTok edits or Instagram reels to onboard people. Like you'll see somebody make 100K and it'll be like this clip. People were calling it like a kill cam for the trenches. So I mean this is the perfect thing to onboard new users into crypto, in my opinion, because they'll see this and it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize this. This was this. I don't want to say easy, but you know what I mean.
So on the social trading side, I think a really understated point here is just the distribution side of things, right? If you look at last cycle, there were things like Moonshot. There were basically these new onboarding distribution mechanisms that got launched mostly on Solana, right? And it was a really easy way for a retail user to be able to actually get on chain and then trade on chain.
The Apple Pay flow, I would say,
exactly.
is, that's important, right? Because people don't want to have to. This is a big issue with Polymarket, actually, or it has been, where when you try to deposit onto the platform and it shows you all of these different addresses on different blockchains, a normal user who's unfamiliar with using blockchains, like they don't want to have to worry about that. They just want to Apple Pay from, like something they're familiar with on their iPhone or whatever, and then just have funds in the app. Like that's what FOMO has been so successful at.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like that Apple Pay onboarding mechanism is huge unlock. I think the other huge unlock here now is the social trading side, like you said, and like the ability to create virality from trading, right? So that it like spreads out onto Instagram and TikTok very easily. And the other side here is the cross-chain component. Before it sounds very like simple, but it's actually a huge unlock to have one app where you can easily buy and sell any single token on any single chain. That has been, even for like crypto native users, right? Like
Yeah.
Zach's like Zach is like one of the most advanced on-chain users in crypto, and he has troubles bridging like constantly, you know, like it's
Yeah.
not,
It's
bridging is
cursed.
not a simple flow, and giving somebody a terminal that is cross-chain really unlocks the full breadth of crypto opportunities for them that having like a single chain application doesn't. So I think those are huge net positives there. The one thing I will say is like I don't think any of us are saying like the point here is to board people to trade meme coins. Obviously, like meme coins have their place and they are great. The point is to get people comfortable transacting on chain. And it just happens that meme coins are a great way of doing that, you know? And the idea is that hopefully they start as like the onboarding mechanism, but they get people more interested in using the other wide range of on-chain services, you know, mostly looking at DeFi and things like that. And they start to build an on-chain profile that becomes more sticky and more lasting over time. And they don't, and basically they become a more advanced crypto user. So, so I think that's been huge. I don't know, Zach, like what is interesting to you on chain right now?
Yeah, I mean, the social trading stuff I think is super fascinating, and like especially, I mean, we talked about this last week or maybe the week before, like the app experience that FOMO has created literally allows people to just kind of treat it like an ordinary fintech application. Like you download the app, you make a profile, you use Apple Pay to sign up, like you never actually realize like you're touching a blockchain, which is like something we've memed in the industry for like 3 years with like, oh, chain abstraction, you'll never realize you're even using a chain. Um and I think FOMO is kind of like the first like real instantiation of that. That's seemingly sticky and working. I mean, it's like the barbell trade is kind of back, like I said. Like we have like the crazy social trading stuff on one end, and then on the other side, like core DeFi seems to be picking back up again. Like outstanding borrows on Aave are up like $1.3 billion on the week, which is like 12.5%, which is pretty substantial given everything that's kind of happened with on-chain lending between just like bad price hacks and all of that stuff. So I think that that's a positive sign. Um, and yeah, well, I think I saw on FOMO like their perps volume just keeps making new highs. Like 11% of their revenue is coming from perps.
They actually surpassed Phantom and MetaMask in Hyperliquid Builder Code revenue, which is the first. I think that's the first time I've ever seen that FOMO surpassing both of them. Because typically, like you'll see Phantom and MetaMask up there as wallets that people will, you know, trade perps through.
I think that's a big trend that like hopefully it sustains, because I think the whole like social trading meme coins creates so many negative externalities with like KOLs just being able to gain influence and dump on people. But I think like the pinnacle of social trading looks closer to like trading stocks, and like having like real edge as a trader versus just like dumping on people.
Yeah.
So I think like as the perps volume starts to pick up and people start trading, I'm not going to call them like real assets, but like something greater than 10,000 market cap, I think this stuff starts to look really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And then it just unlocks like a totally new cohort of people. Like there's only so many people in the world who are willing to trade memes, but we know that there's a ton of people who trade stocks and higher market cap cryptos and all of that stuff, which I think is like super conducive to perps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say
that goes.
I would like to see FOMO move faster on supporting blockchains that there's demand for. Like they were kind of late on supporting Robinhood Chain in app, and they still do not support Hyper EVM. And you know there was significant demand this past weekend for trading tokens on Hyper EVM. Some people were using the pump app for that. But also something interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah. I saw like you know there was some issues with it, but some people were using it. Yeah, but also something interesting, you know, is that FOMO, like you can't like multi-wallet on FOMO, and that's been like a big thing with trading terminals. Like that's kind of why Axiom blew up, was because it was so easy to, you could manage like all of these different wallets and bundle these tokens so easily, and just keep farming over and over. And you would see like the Fortnite kids just sitting there on Axiom, like farming all these coins. And the fact that FOMO has been able to achieve, such success without enabling that, just like one unified balance, one wallet, I think is very impressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's good. It's a net positive. And I think the Perps edition is a great example of like how you would expect these apps to become like super apps, basically, right? Jupiter is a great example of one app that's already done this. Like if you go onto Jupiter right now, it started as just a trading aggregator. Then it moved into having a Perps product. Then it moved into having a lending product. Now it has a prediction markets product. It has a gotcha product. So like if you're a Jupiter user, you can basically do everything in the app totally chain abstracted as if you're a native blockchain user. I would expect, like, I wouldn't surprise me for FOMO. I don't know if they're going to do the launchpad thing. We talked about that. Maybe they do, but like they should be adding probably like some DeFi integrations, right? Like that you want to be able to earn yield on your stables that are sitting in the token. So yeah, I mean, this is all really positive in terms of like building out the infrastructure on chain is so critical. Be like in addition to the regulatory sides of things, to making like just normal people start to use crypto every day. All right, let's wrap up the discussion now with our final topic. Just talking about this kind of more niche development that's happened over the past week called CyberLeak, CyberLeak. Sorry, is a pretty wild story. So basically, like this anonymous operator or operators that call themselves CyberLeak have started dropping what look like real Grand Theft Auto 6 gameplay clips and map screenshots. For those who like aren't familiar with Grand Theft Auto or just like video games, like this is one of the most hyped games over the past 5 to 6 years. The last like Grand Theft Auto was released in 2013, and it's still like one of the most played games. But basically this group, and then there's been constant delays, right? But basically this group is like protesting Take-Two, which is the studio that makes Grand Theft Auto, and they have like this manifesto about gamer rights, right? Like they don't think there should be any digital pre-orders. They think that there should be no single player locked downloadable content. They think like offline mode should be enabled forever. So like if the game developers stop like hosting servers, you should still be able to play single player, which has become a thing. And over the past, like last week, they launched basically like a Solana meme coin, as a way to kind of like fund development for their like ongoing hacking, I guess. And they also set up this system where you can use Monero, which is like another privacy coin like Zcash, and basically like use Monero as a way to like pay to communicate with the hackers. The Solana meme coin you can basically vote on what you want them to leak next. So it's like, do you want a screenshot of like a car at night, or do you want like a guy flying a plane or something? It's like, it's ridiculous. But they're like
so
getting
sick.
they're getting hit with subpoenas and everything like this. But it's been a really fascinating story to watch, because they're also using all of these like super, I would say, like core privacy and kind of like anti-censorship primitives in crypto, right? So beyond just like the Solana meme coin, they've got Monero as like a currency that allows them to do this without being tracked to some extent. And then they've also been using Arweave as a way to store everything. And Arweave is like a permissionless storage protocol that basically stores something in perpetuity, so it can never be taken down once it's up. And as long as the validator set is running, it's impossible to basically censor it. So I don't know. I thought it was like a unique kind of interesting privacy meme coin anti-censorship development. Will, you're the on-chain expert. Like, do you think what have you seen on this?
I mean, it's super sick. I think my favorite part of this is, this guy Minex Dynasty, who is kind of famous on Twitter for his life as a video game trade, where he longed ETH last year and bought his dream car from longing ETH. And he's close with like the Legend Trade guys. He's one of the more like well-known traders in the space, very active on socials. And he basically started doing this challenge where he funded a FOMO account with $1,000 and publicly has been trading it. The goal has been to buy a house with the money that he's able to make trading on FOMO. And he, you know, ran it up to 40K, had some bad trades along the way, but it's publicly viewable, so everybody is able to see his trades and everything. And he made this huge bet on CyberLeak and has turned $40,000 into 400,000 on FOMO, which has been pretty crazy to see. Like, he published his full thesis. He was actually down like $15,000 in unrealized loss at one point because the token dipped, and it went up to 20 mil, and he's up over 10x. So I think this is this is the type of thing that I'm talking about, where you'll see like trick shot, that thing I was talking about earlier. You'll see maybe clips of this trade going viral on more normie social media platforms, and people will be like, wow, like I didn't realize that was possible in crypto, where I can just download this app and I can see this token going viral on social media and I can make that much money. Obviously $40,000 is a very significant initial investment, so it's not like he did that with $5 or anything, but I think it's pretty insane to see, and like very impressive. And also, notably, this isn't like a KOL farming their copy traders, right? Like this was a trade that he made, posted it. Everybody could have seen it. Everybody could have, tailed him or whatever, and made money that way. It wasn't like a 10-second hold time farm on like a 1-second candle, right?
Will, what do you think about this super interesting privacy and anti-censorship theme that we're seeing emerge? Will's like, well, this one dude made like $500,000, so I think it's very interesting.
I just think, that's like my favorite part of all this is just, it's cool to just see people win publicly without engaging in malicious behavior.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's also kind of ironic, like publicly making gains on a privacy token. Like,
well said. Yeah, so I think there is definitely like that element to it. I like the other on-chain element is obviously just like this creator coin phenomenon. Like, I don't think that's going away anytime soon, because as we're seeing with things like this, and we've seen it with a lot of other creators in the past who have tried it, like it is an effective way to like get funding for for something you're doing very fast. Now, in the case of this, like none of us are endorsing what they're doing per se. I think it's just more a demonstration of some of the interesting like primitives that have been built on blockchains over time, and how they can be used for different types of attempts. Like ultimately this is probably like illegal what they're doing, and so like who knows how that shapes there. But just like the pure sophistication and the different components that came together for this to all fall into place, it points to kind of like the composability element of crypto, right? Like you've got the privacy component with XMR, you've got the creator coin component as a way to fund it, you've got Arweave as a way for permanent storage. Like there's a lot of different tooling that's been built in crypto. And going back to what we were talking about before, like as people get more familiar operating on chain, which is what a lot of like the meme coin and social trading stuff is driving, it's going to unlock a lot more new use cases and interesting experiments, I think. And so we'll be watching those, and especially in a bull market where people are a lot more willing to experiment. I think like the fundamental infrastructure that's been built is going to enable all of this crazy stuff to blow up that we could not even like comprehend before. Like listening to the CEO of Robinhood talk on this podcast this weekend was so interesting, just because his like, we usually listen to like Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, right? And he, first off, he's done a lot of great things, but he's not like, he doesn't really like acknowledge some of the on-chain innovations that are made, it feels like. And
yeah,
Vlad was kind of like,
he's not like relatable for
exactly.
degens,
And Vlad was kind of like, whoa, like this is cool. He was like, I would have never thought of this. And this is only something that would have been enabled by us having a blockchain. So who knows if it works out or not, but I'm glad to see it emerge like that. So just as a side note for our listeners, we're going to have the head of the Robinhood ecosystem on our episode next week. So be on a lookout for that as well. All right. Well, this concludes our first bull market episode. Hopefully we didn't jinx it and we come back next week and it's still a bull market.
You got to knock on wood again.
But yeah, thanks guys. And in our first 3 box, hopefully we'll have, I think Thad will be back next week and we'll also have a special guest. So, but yeah, great episode. The year of the fire horse continues. Let's get to work. Thanks a lot, guys.